Hey everyone, it's Mace1370. Today we're going to do an account review for CptCrunch. Before we get into that, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also, check the video description below for a link to my Discord. Okay, so CptCrunch asked me to do an account review. He said he wants to progress into higher levels of PvP, but he feels like he's stuck. He's been playing since the game was released, but is largely free to play, I believe. And I think he said he had trouble getting Masters last season. He wants to be able to at least get that, and then I think eventually push, into Challenger and Champion. So, first thing is first, obviously we have to look at the pet house and see what we're dealing with. And he has the purple dragon, which makes me rage. I want this so bad. Oh man, and he has mac and cheese? So lucky. I also like this guy a lot. His name is Lobby. You named your lobby pet Lobby. Interesting choice. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Man, I'm so jealous of this. If you knew how many pet tickets I've spent trying to get him. Okay, very impressive pets, I approve. Alright, so we can take a quick look at the resources here. Tons of saved up skystones. Lots of, I think, let's see, crafting materials. Yeah, we have a ton of these things that we can use. The conversion gems. Looks like he's used some wyvern mats. Oh no, sorry, these. Oh wow, he has quite a few wyvern mats to use. Yeah, these are the ones you trade with your guild. Alright, so yeah, I have some gold saved up as well. So that indicates to me that you could be, spending your resources more to get better gear. These resources don't do anything for you when they're just sitting there. I advocate spending them for farming better gear. So we can look at Lilius first. She's a popular knight. Looks like she is semi-built. 201 speed, 21k HP, 1270 defense, and a little bit of effectiveness. I think this Lilius is okay. She obviously doesn't have any 90 gear, and she is using some, 67 gear from normal raid. I think with Lilius, you want to have her speed tuned in a way to go immediately after Falconer Cluries in whatever bracket you're trying to compete in. So if in your bracket Falconer Cluries are like 265, 270, you want to put Lilius at like 255, for example. You want her faster than the DPS in those brackets so that she can cut in between them and Falconer Clury. So I think this is kind of too slow to do that. I'm not sure how fast the Falconer Cluries are in Masters. I imagine they're like anywhere from 240s to 250s probably. So I think that if you could speed her up to like 230, that would be good. 230, 235, maybe even 240. You don't, her outspeeding Falconer Clury can be okay if they're not on immunity, because then she can just S2 provoke them. But if the Falconer Clury runs immunity, is very awkward. So ideally she goes right after they go. And she's very strong if they do that, or if she does that. So her health here is, I think, acceptable. You could use a little bit more. And then I prefer more defense on my tanks, around 1500. And then any effectiveness you get is just going to be a nice little bonus. I think that Adamant Shield is a perfectly fine artifact for her. Okay, so here's Charon. Probably used in Guild War defense. That's where I see him mostly these days. He is not on speed set, which is, fine as long as he has decent damage, which it looks like you probably have. 300 crit damage, and almost 3700 attack. So he probably does his job. Obviously, you could build him with more damage and that would be better, but you just kind of have to build him for, the bracket that you're in at the time, and I think this is fine for that. His speed probably doesn't matter so much. Obviously you want him to take turns, but if you put him on immunity and he has his passive, he's going to take a turn and then hopefully kill something and extend those buffs. Elia's Knife is, I think, a really good choice for that. You can pair him with Charles and have Charles go before him, so that Charles kind of softens up the enemy team and gives Charon attack buff, and it's a strong combo. And then a lot of people run the S1 EE if they're going to use Knife. I think it's fine whether you use the S3 or the S1. The Silence EE is only really used for RTA if you build them like Super Zoom Zoom, and that has kind of fallen off as more of a meme. I assume Mercedes is for Guild War and Tamarin is for PvE content. Here is Last Rider Crow. Okay, or not Last Rider Crow, sorry, Blue Crow. I'm just so used to see LR Crow in RTA. So here's Blue Crow. Good speed at 200. I think that's a fine speed for him. His HP is really low. Really low HP. Only 19 almost 20k HP. I think you want him at least at like 23k HP because his S3 ability, the damage is going to scale off of that. So that's very important. But good defense, I like that. You have him on a fair bit of effect resistance, which isn't bad. You know, the frenzy changes have made this less good by a good margin, but this will still work for you a bit, you know, in the early stages of frenzy to prevent him from getting provoked and stuff. Crow, though, is typically not going to horse on the first turn, right? He's going to horse on like turns like 2, 3, or 4 maybe, depending on how much damage your team is taking. So I think the effect resistance should hold up until then, probably. Also, the effect resistance changes might not be permanent. I think everyone's kind of like fingers crossed that they're not, because it basically invalidates ER. So for the current meta, I think you could drop all of this effect resistance, or a lot of it, put him on immunity, and then get his health up, you know, to like 23 or 24k, and I think he would work better for you. The immunity would allow you to get that first turn so you could get your defense buff up, and then at some point he'll horse. Okay, here's Seaside Bologna, probably a popular pick in RTA for you. She has a very solid build, I think. A little bit of speed, you know, which is fine. Some people really advocate for keeping her at base speed. I think that is important, you know, especially in like Guild Wars and stuff where you don't want units like Charles to go before her so that she can debuff and stuff like that, or ML Ken. But I think this was a bigger issue back when ML Ken was more of a thing. Now that he's not really around, you know, I don't think a little speed really makes a big difference. But 3700 attack and 251 crit damage is solid. She's going to be hitting things pretty hard. Decent, you know, good defense at 1344. Her HP is a little on the low side, and I think she has an acceptable amount of crit. I think that if you were going to change anything, I would try to get her HP up a bit, maybe to like 14,000, I think. But otherwise, a very solid SSB build, I think. She probably does work for you. The one thing is drink is not maxed. I would absolutely max drink. Do you have any bottles? You have 4 bottles. Okay, so I'm not going to do it because these are, you know, a very valuable resource, but I would absolutely max this and get this to plus 30. This is arguably, you know, one of the best uses for bottle right now. Even with counters like Rwana and stuff, SSB is still used all the time. You know, she's just picked much later in the draft than she used to be. Okay, here's Dizzy. I think you had her on a different artifact before, and I switched it to Violin. It was Etika Scepter, I believe. So okay speed and good effectiveness, but she is way too squishy at 13,000 HP and 1100 defense. I think with Dizzy, you also have, looks like a lot of crit chance and crit damage, which I would not recommend for her at all because her S3 ability cannot crit. See, it always misses, and misses don't crit. So building crit chance and crit damage on her, to me, feels like a waste. There are some like super fast Dizzies in like High Legend. There's a couple that are built for damage, and they're very annoying, but I mean, that's like the best gear in the world basically to get that done. So I wouldn't use that as like a template on how to build a Dizzy. I think for practical purposes, if you're going to put her on speed set, you want her bulky with high effectiveness and good speed. Kind of same idea for counter, but the speed just goes down. So in terms of her HP and defense, I would try to get this to like 17 or 18 and then like 1500 or more defense. You know, you want her thick so that she can take turns. I took her into RTA and she was almost immediately one-shot. So I think this build is basically just preventing you from using her. Try to find like tank gear and put it on her, and I think she'll perform a lot better for you. Angelic Montmorency, I assume this is probably for like Guild Wars or PvE. The artifact is probably for PvE, just for a little bit more healing. I think, you know, putting her on Rod or Tome for RTA is a better choice. If you don't have extra copies of Rod, Tome works well on her as an anti-debuff unit. 176 ER is probably going to help prevent some debuffs. People try to get her up to like 250 or higher, and it's possible with her because of her, you know, imprints, and I think she might even get more effect resistance in her skill tree and stuff. I wouldn't really focus on her too much, just because right now debuffers aren't really a thing. Just the meta, that's how it is right now. And who knows, you know, what next season is going to be like. If debuffers make a return, then you can focus on her. But for now, I don't think she is super necessary. She's a nice pocket pick to have if you have her built, though. And if you did want to improve her, I would look at getting her HP and defense up. this is too squishy. You know, you probably want at least 16 to 18,000 HP and 1400 defense while maintaining or getting this ER to like, you know, 225 or 250 or something. Okay, here's Dain. She is on Rod, that's good. I think that's the best artifact for her. And overall, I think I like this Dain build. That is a very nice defense, 1785. 13,000 HP is okay. It's on the lower end. I know Dain has a low base health, so it's hard to get this number up. 221 speed is pretty good. And, you know, enough effect resistance to prevent randomly getting, like, provoked or something like that by a Crow or an FCC. And you have her on immunity, which is nice. So overall, I think this is another one of your better built units, this one in SSB. I think Dain is very strong in the right drafts, so she's definitely usable. Looks like you've 90'd her boots, but not some of the other things. So she could be improved just by doing that, you know, to get even better stats. Take a look here. It's an ER ring. Oh, these boots are pretty nice. Wow, these are nice boots. Okay, cool. Here's Charles. Alright, so Charles is on counter set. I assume this is for Guild War. He is very, very squishy, and his damage is like not really there either. So you might be trying to force counter here, just because a lot of people put Charles on counter. I don't think he needs to be. I think you could just put him on speed set, and that would be fine. It would probably work better for you if you could get him faster, you know, with high HP defense and stuff. 3,000 attack is, I think, where you want to be, and then get this crit damage up to at least like 250, if not higher. Once you get to 3k attack on Charles, I think all the other damage should go into crit chance. He is a very low base attack hero, so it feels kind of a waste to get it higher than 3k, especially since he's so stat hungry for other things like HP and defense. And then just speed tune him with Kayron so that he goes, you know, before Kayron, which it looks like with this build he already is, so that's fine. Okay, Falcon or Clury. Also a pretty good build, 255 speed. I think this will work for at least Masters. You know, as you go higher, you're probably going to have to get her up to like 260, 265 to make sure you get that first turn. Some people really invest in their Cluries to get her up to like 280, and then she can even be a speed contesting unit. I think that's viable if you want to do that. But I like her HP here. 18,000 HP is really solid for her. 1264 defense is fine. More is obviously better, but I think this is, you know, an acceptable balance. Since her heal scales off of 18,000 or off of her HP, I think that focusing on HP over defense is probably the way to go, even though defense is what's going to affect her damage. 142 effectiveness is very solid also. You know, you're going to be able to debuff Ruels and stuff like that, especially with the Frenzy changes, you know, so she's coming in with 162 effectiveness with the new Frenzy. Overall, yeah, I like this Flurry build a lot. I think she does work for you probably. So I noticed you had her on a different artifact before. I think it was Bastion, probably to give, you know, one of your DPS units like immunity and stuff. I think that's okay. It's not bad to get that. Ideally, you get those units on immunity and built in a way that they don't need that barrier. I think Ranun's is a very strong choice for her if you don't have other options. I would give this a shot and see how you like it. It'll really help her turn cycle more quickly. So this is going to shine in kind of like longer matches when it can stack up, and she'll just go around in circles. Other artifacts that I think are really good on her include Justice for All, which I know you have a single copy of. This is, I think, a very strong artifact for her, because if she gets like immunity from it or defense buff or speed buff, like those are all amazing. I think it can also give, yeah, crit resistance as well. Critical hit chance resistance is another good one. You know, the immunity, sorry, I meant the heal is also really good. The continuous heal, you know, increased attack is pretty meh. Crit chance is pretty meh. But all the others, you know, she can use most of those buffs and benefit from it. The problem is, I think to justify it, you probably need at least like a plus 21 or plus 24 copy. So maybe for now, just try Ranun's. And if you get more copies of JFA, definitely consider it for Flurry. Baiken is on Rage set, so probably a PvE hero. interested. Let's see, Violet looks like he's just on the Abyss set. Bellona probably also for PvE. Here's Iseria. Looks like she has 226 speed, so this is probably like a PvE or maybe like an arena offense type build or something. Let's take a look at your Tamarin. Are you using her for that? Maybe 186, so that's kind of a gap. So probably not. So probably just PvE. Oops, we jumped all the way down here. When we were talking, one of the things you mentioned was that you have trouble with really tanky teams. Like you can't bust through them. Units like Last Rider Crow, Fallen Cecilia, Ruel, etc. I think Iseria is a unit that can really help you do that. She is very useful because she can, put unbuffable and defense break, which is a very scary combo. And it strips away all their buffs as well. So against a healer like Ruel, you can use her S3 on either Ruel or another healer, and Ruel is almost forced to burn one of her skills to get rid of that, like her S2, and just kind of waste the healing aspect, because otherwise that defense broken unit is just going to die to, like one of your follow-up DPS units. And if Ruel does that, then you can reset Iseria with her S2 and then do it again. And then Ruel is going to be in a situation where she has to use her S3 to cleanse it, or just let the unit die and then res them with the S3. But either way, it puts a lot of pressure on Ruel, because now, Iseria's traded her skills for Ruel's skills, but when Iseria rotates back, she is going to, be able to do it at a much faster tempo with her skill reset. Or if you have other units that can defense break, like Ruel just can't really keep up with it. So to build her for your purposes, I think that there's two options. You could give her kind of like a similar speed or maybe a little bit faster, and then just give her a ton of bulk and effectiveness. I think that would be the less ideal option. The better option would be you could drop her speed a bit, build her with maybe like similar HP, maybe like 14,000 HP, get her defense up to like 1,300 or so, and increase her attack. You probably want 3k, I think, is what people use about. And then get her crit and crit damage, so 85-90% crit, and then like 220 to 250 crit damage, somewhere in there. You can drop effectiveness if you do that, and you can drop her speed down to like 190, 200, something in that range. And I think that build would be very strong as like a Bruiser Iseria. You would put her on Proof of Valor probably for that, just to increase her tankiness, and that can do a lot of work for you. If you do build her as a Bruiser, I would recommend getting her to plus 15 just for that damage. You are able to skimp a bit on Iseria's damage stats, like only getting up to like 3k or so, and like 240-ish, 250 crit damage, just because her multipliers are so good. And items like this are great for her. The Hellraid stuff, you can get the immunity Hellraid chest, and that would also do work on her as well. So that's what I would recommend. And the reason I would recommend the Bruiser build is because you already have Falconer Clury, and if they're both built as like kind of speedy, tanky effectiveness units, it's awkward to put both in your draft. But if Iseria is a damage source, then you can draft her as a DPS unit. So here's Basar. Looks like you have him slow and tanky, so a lot of people are doing this. I really like this build. 217 speed, 14k HP, 1500 defense, and you actually have quite a bit of attack on him, so he'll do a little bit more damage. Let's see, effectiveness is 125, so overall very reasonable. I think you could, sacrifice this attack and just go even tankier, or into more effectiveness. With the frenzy changes, this is probably fine. I think you want at least 150 on him, but you're effectively at 145 here with the frenzy change, so he'll do just fine with this build. And a lot of your stuff isn't even 90'd. Once you 90 it, he'll be, faster and have even more effectiveness. This neck, by the way, is amazing on Dizzy. If you don't want to use it on Basar, or if you have something that you could replace. I think Dizzy can use the attack a bit more than he can. Okay, cool. Solid Basar. Alright, so we have Vivian here. Looking at her build, almost 4k attack, almost max crit chance, 255 crit damage. I think those offensive stats are good. The speed is way too low, unfortunately. Because she's very squishy as well. 8k HP and 1100 defense. I think, her HP you can kind of ignore, but I think the defense you want a bit more at like 12 maybe. 1300 would be nice. And those are acceptable defensive stats if you can get her speed up so that she can take a turn before most other DPS do. And the reason why you want that is because you're using Dignus Orb, so she'll get her S3 off and get the barrier, and then that barrier combo with, you know, a defense of like 12 or 1300 will make it very difficult for them to take her out, you know, in time. So you're not using speed boots, so you'll probably have to use speed boots, because I think you're going to want her at like 230 probably, 220, 230, and on immunity. You can lose some attack if you have to, but I think she'll perform better for you with, you know, with those stats so that she can get her barrier up. Otherwise, she's just going to get one shot before she takes a turn. Let's see, what E are you using? Yeah, you're using the CR increase one, so all the more reason to get her faster so that she can do that. Some people like the cleanse one as well, but I like this one. I think it's good. She's plus 15. I think Vivian's a really strong AoE unit. Into things like Spectenny, she can do a lot of work, but you need to get her speed up so that she can take a turn. Here's Destina, probably for PvE, I assume, just because she has like really low ER. Otherwise tanky. I think Destina can be a viable option kind of in like the Angelic Montmorency role if you want a healer who is strong against debuff teams, but I wouldn't really focus on her right now for the aforementioned reasons of debuffers not being super popular. Here's Rowana. Let's see, Rowana, you actually have her kind of speedy. She looks like she's on speed boots. So, looks like you have her on Shamadra's Staff as well. I don't think Shamadra's Staff is a super great choice for her. She is tanky, 1500, almost 1600 defense, and 20k HP. You have some ER on her. I think ER is fine for Rowana, but realistically, if you just put her on immunity, you can ignore ER entirely, since all you really care about is using her skill 3 like once, and you don't even, it's really not even a big deal if you don't get to use it on her first turn. I think generally with Rowana, she just has to survive. That's the main thing. So I've seen a lot of people just literally slap on this free health gear on her and then use the HP boots instead, just to make her that much thicker, and I think that would honestly be fine. Getting her defense up even more will help that. Let's see, we want health. So it looks like you have him here. Here's one. This one a bunch into ER. So you could do this if you didn't want to bother with HP boots. How much defense is this giving you? 15, and that's only giving you 7. So you lose even a little bit of defense, but your HP would go up. Like, I think this is better. This one's rolling into defense, and it's only rolled twice. So I would max this one out and then see, compare the two. But I think they're both decent options. Ideally, I'd put her on immunity. In terms of her artifact, I don't think Shamadra is the best way to go. Let's see, what other options do you have? I think Elena's artifact, what's it called? I'm drawing a total blank. The one that has a chance of dispelling things. Stella Harpa is the best one for her. Units like SSB are going to be constantly proccing and hitting her when you're using Rowana, and so it's just going to cleanse off those debuffs, because getting debuffed is kind of Rowana's kryptonite. If Unhealable gets put on a bunch of people, Rowana stops working. Other than debuffs, though, she just has to survive to do her job. So artifacts, Potion Vial you could consider, but she's really slow, so I probably wouldn't. Same kind of reason for Celestine. If she was on Counterset, then maybe Celestine would be better. I would still prefer Stella Harpa, though. I don't think you have a copy. Water's Origin could be okay just to make her even tankier. Idol's Cheer I think would be a really strong choice, since it looks like you're not using this on anybody else. Again, against units like SSB that are going to be using AoEs a lot, having Idol's Cheer on her is going to bump up, your CR people, and that could help. So looking at the stuff you have, I would probably put her on Idol's Cheer, because I don't see Stella Harpa here. Yeah, it looks like you don't have one. So yeah, I would use Idol's Cheer. Alright, General Purgus is probably a Wyvern candidate. Here's Judge Kisei, probably for Arena. She's not really an RTA hero. Little Queen Charlotte is a very strong bruiser right now. Let's take a look at your build. I actually like it. It's nice. 3,700 attack is, I think, a good amount of attack for her. More is obviously better, but 37 is good. 13, almost 14k HP and 1000 defense is, I think, like kind of reasonably tanky for her, because her passive, gives her that critical hit reduction. So she's deceptively tanky. 166 speed is perfectly fine, since her little passive also gives her like a Durandal effect. So when she hits, she gets bumped up. So you can get away with low speed on her. 250 crit damage, 257, fine. I think her crit chance is what I would look to improve. It's only 77%. She's also not on immunity, so I would look to improve that as well. But you have some pieces here that are not I-90'd, so I think that with I-90'ing stuff and putting her on immunity, you could maintain this build and probably improve some crit chance. It's a pretty decent chest. It's hard to use these defense sets for, you know, heroes and RTA that want immunity. And LQC is definitely a hero that wants immunity, since, you know, she's slow, so she's not getting first turn by a mile. Also, you're using Sigurd's Scythe, which is an amazing choice for her, but your crit chance is a little low. And doesn't this... Yeah, so it's all the healing you get is going to be based off the damage you do, so if you don't crit, you're not going to heal for very much. You could consider Hellcutter just to get her crit back up. I love Sigurd's Scythe on her, but I think you need high crit chance to, you know, to pull that off. So priority number 1 would be putting her on immunity, and then maybe try Hellcutter just to see how it feels. Carmen is probably for Guild Wars. Spez, it looks like you kind of have him built. There's a bunch of I-90 gear here. I don't have Spez. I don't use him. I don't really see him used very often. He's kind of a setup hero that's awkward to use. I would personally not focus on him. A lot of this gear could probably be switched onto other heroes. I don't know if you're just playing around with him just to see how he does, or if you're trying to use him as an RB answer. I think it's tough just because RBs are typically built a little faster and Spez may just die. I've seen some Bruiser Spezes that are entertaining, but I probably wouldn't focus on him. Here's Apoc Ravi. I think she's a very strong bruiser. She did get hit by the frenzy changes, but she's still good in the right setting. I don't have her, so I don't know exactly how she should be built. I think high HP is really ideal since she is an HP scaling bruiser. And she's on counter set, so I think this build is, for the most part, probably fine. She probably does work. I think a lot of people use Crimson Seed. Timeless Anchor is probably okay too. Let's see. Okay, so here's Remnant Violet. So I would change this Remnant Violet build. You have decent damage here with 3,500 attack and 280 crit damage and, you know, good crit chance, but he is insanely squishy. Even with evasion, he's gonna die. And I'm speaking from experience because mine had almost identical stats like this when I was on speed set. And like one Last Rider Crow S3 just killed him. And this really hurt me in the final days of RTA because it became, I don't know, it just felt like with all the true damage around, he stopped being much of a threat. You would use his skill 3 once and then he would just die, and that was it. So I would recommend either getting his speed higher and giving him a little bit more bulk, or putting him on lifesteal set with more bulk. We can take a quick look. So let's say we did lifesteal. You know, people have the Abyss set, which is, I think, probably fine for him. Let's see. The Abyss neck is not great for him because it's attack, obviously. The awkward thing with the Abyss set is like all the pieces have the like exact same subs for the most part. So it's hard to make up the defense and crit damage if that's all you're using. Okay, that's actually, this rolled well, pretty well. You dodged defect resistance. You're like the one guy that managed to do that. Congratulations. Okay, I don't see... So we need speed boots. Unfortunately, you're lacking on speed boots. This is a gray item. Can we get away with this? Let's see what it looks like. And then we need an immunity attack ring, probably. What if we did that? So we have like no crit chance. Okay, what if we did... If we did this, and now we need an immunity boot. That's 80. You're really lacking the crit damage. Shoot. Alright, so yeah, I don't see an immunity boot here with crit damage on it. That just has 5. So I think you're like one piece of gear away from making this a reality. You know, right now we don't have the lifesteal set, and this has like 9% crit damage. So what you're looking for an immunity boot with a speed main and a very high crit damage roll. A little bit of attack and a little bit of crit chance and defense would go a long way as well. But this is like an okay amount of HP. Obviously more is better. And you can kind of, having defense on him is super nice, but given the fact that the things that are killing him these days seem to be like Last Rider Crow and Blood Moon Haste, they're ignoring defense anyways. So getting his HP up to at least like 12k on lifesteal is, I think, really strong. I'm running him right now, and he has like essentially 12k HP and 1100 defense, and he does work, like a lot of work. 3600, almost 3700 attack. This is plenty of attack. You don't need any more. You want like 250 crit chance, or crit damage, if you can. Do you have any imprints on him? Because that'll make up the crit chance. You don't. Do you have any spare imprints? You have 2. So I think that he is a big candidate for these. I think they're well worth it. That would give you have 2 of those. I haven't checked to see if you've bought the one for the recent season or not, but that would give you 8 more crit chance. So he was at like 84, so he'd go up to like 92 just with that alone. If you haven't gotten this season's, he'd go up to like 95, so that's really good. I would definitely do that, and keep him on Dreamblade. I think he will work a lot better for you. So the alternative would be to speed him up and get him a little more HP, so that he just doesn't die to crows and stuff like that. If you do want to speed him up, I think getting him to like 230 is probably where you would need to get him. I know Spez had some of that speedy gear. This doesn't have attack on it. Doesn't have attack. So you may not have the gear to put him on speed. But I think your lifesteal build is close to being viable. You just need that one item. So if you have... How many speed gems do you have? Ooh, do you not have any? That's sad. I would select the speed gems for any of the selection. Do you have any of the consumable? Oh, you have 6 of these. Okay, so you have 6 speed gems. So I would use those speed gems for immunity boots. How many immunity? I'm just curious. All right, so you only have 27, so you need to farm more of these. But run A13, craft boots, extract the immunity ones. If they don't work out, make 6 boots. You might, 6 boots is a decent chance to get one that can work. You're looking for crit damage, and you want it to roll high. Some HP defense would be nice, and crit chance as well. Attack is good on him too, but you have plenty of attack from the other items, so that's what I would look for. And then I think your Remnant Violet would perform a lot better. Here's CDOM, probably for Arena. Champ Z. Let's see. He's not very tanky, so I think this Champ Z would have problems if you tried to use him in RTA, just because he's so squishy. They'll probably kill him. You could probably still draft him into dedicated CC teams that don't have a lot of damage, but I think it's going to be hard for him with his HP and defense. I think he'll just flop over. So if you do want to try to use him, I would get him more HP and defense, especially since he gives himself defense buff, so that goes a long way. You can keep his attack and crit damage and stuff, it's fine. He'll do enough work. So Aras is not built, but he is 5-starred. We'll talk about Aras in a bit. Here's your Flitica. Pretty good Flitica build. She's on Confile, so I think you said you were trying to experiment around with cleaving. I think the problem you're going to run into is that you're lacking a couple DPS to go along with her. So you have Faithless Litica. I saw you had Alots. How fast is he? 245. He's on those speed boots, and then Flitica's like 260. So I think Flitica is plenty fast for cleaving it in your bracket. Where'd she go? Because she's 50. She's down here. You know, and you have the crit chance and decent effectiveness on her. So this build will work just fine for cleaving. You know, you're going to want to get your Alots at probably like 255 or 260 also to use them with her. And I prefer having my Alots faster than my Flitica because I think it lets you maximally capitalize on the CR pushing. So if Alots goes first, he can push up a unit, that unit goes, and then Flitica, you know, uses her S2 and it pushes that unit again. If Flitica goes first, she pushes everyone, and then Alots goes and he boosts somebody, and that unit doesn't really get the benefit of Flitica's boost. It's kind of small, but that's how I prefer to do it. Flitica does have a higher base speed though, so in terms of like speed contesting, if you put your best gear on her, you're going to be able to speed contest slightly better. So it's probably a preference thing, I guess. An alternative use for Flitica, since I think that you lack a few of the DPS to do the cleave thing, is to put her on Guiding Light, and you can use her as a counter pick to units like Ruel, because she can reset Ruels. You can also use her as a counter pick to other units that are typically built fast, like Flurry, because Flitica is probably going to outspeed them, and then you can reset the Flurry and she doesn't do anything. You could use her as a counter pick to, you know, like fast debuffers, like if they have a fast Dizzy, something like that. I guess maybe not the best against Dizzy, because her skill node's just going to get wiped away. But that's, you know, another potential use for her. Otherwise, I think, you know, you have her on the right build for a cleave for your bracket. The units that you would want to look out for, you'd want to get a Spec Tenny if you could. Mages that can hold book are really valuable. You have the C-Dom. So you have a kind of like those core 3, and then just finding a couple other DPS to work with them. LQC can actually do work, which is kind of funny with that comp. You can draft her. She can work well. I guess Vivian could work well. So it could be worth a shot, but if I were you, I'd focus more on bruisers. So given the fact that you're a little stuck, when I did a couple matches, I noticed that your unit pools is not that deep. I think you'll find success once you build a couple more units up. So those units, I think, should be, one should be Adventurer Rast. He is amazing. He is so strong. So 6-star him and build him up. You want him just fast, tanky, and then effectiveness is a nice bonus, if you can get it. I think like 220, 230 speed is like really solid, and then anything above that is just bonus. You know, at really high brackets, people are building him at like 250 just to like outspeed Arby's and stuff, but I think 230 is like fine. And then, you know, tanky, like 21 to 23k HP, and then 1500 defense, and he's going to do really well for you. He'll be an additional knight to use. You know, you don't have FCC to draft, so I think you could use another knight. So that would be one unit I would definitely build. I would make these changes to Remnant Violet. Let's see. Oh, and then you mentioned having trouble with Arby. So an answer to Arby is Doris. And I think you do have Doris. She's a Soul Weaver. So Doris is a strong answer to Arby, and if you build her up, you might be able to get away with not pre-banning him every single game, and then you could pre-ban Spectre Tenebria, which I think would be really good for you. The reason why Doris can help you deal with Arby is because in her skill tree here, she has numerous things that reduce damage from dark units. So she heals everyone whenever a dark unit, attacks her. She can randomly increase everybody's defense for a turn after being attacked by a dark unit. And then she kind of has like the LQC reduced crit damage, and it's a lot. It's like 30% when a dark unit attacks her. She can also do work against Rylet as well. She dispels, so she's a strong Soul Weaver. I think especially against Arby. She has AoE defense buff, which is super strong. So Doris, I think, is an underrated unit and could really help you. FCC is another great unit against Arby, but you don't have her. So I understand why you're kind of put in a position right now where you have to ban her. But Having Doris gives you a counter pick to Arby, and they're not typically going to ban Doris, I think. Apoc Ravi's good, so you have some solid bruisers here. When the Alencia banner comes back out, I would probably recommend grabbing her just to get a nice grass bruiser. The last unit I'm going to recommend that you build is Fire Ravi. She is amazing and so strong right now. You said you have trouble with tank teams. I think Fire Ravi, or sorry, not tank teams, but Last Rider crowd teams, Fire Ravi is your answer for them. She out-heals his damage, especially if you put her on Sigurd's Scythe, which you have a couple copies of. You know, she has super strong single target damage. You don't have to use her S3 against him. You can hold it until the right moment when his S3 is refreshed and ready to be used. And if your Fire Ravi takes a turn before he uses it, you can pop your S3 off. By then, immunity has worn off from their team. It doesn't reduce his skill cooldown because he would have it anyways. It does huge damage and can stun people. Her S1 does fat damage, can stun. You can soul burn it to like one-shot things in late frenzy. It does like an insane amount of damage. So I would strongly recommend building Fire Ravi right now. She is very good. I think I saw, you know, you have the molas to do it. So I think she's a great candidate for those molas. She's worth plus 15 right now. So I think building Ras, building Ravi, consider Iceria as a bruiser. Getting your Remnant Violet on Lifesteal. I think those will go a long way in terms of, you know, helping you out. Your Clury's great. Fixing your Dizzy, getting your tankier. Get her on a max copy of Violin. That's something I forgot to mention. Violin is, I think, a great artifact for her because she can act as a pseudo, you know, buff stripper. And Dizzy's problem is if everyone's on immunity, she can't use her S3. So units that buff immunity can be huge problems for her, like Adventure Ras, but if she has Violin, she's constantly stripping it off. It's so annoying to fight against. So definitely, you know, go the immunity route. So that's it for the heroes. In terms of resource management, I think you need to spend your Skystones farming. Just farm more, basically. Everybody needs to farm more, but I think you really need to farm more. You have a ton of these gems here, you know, that you can use. I would use them. You know, build your units, use this stuff up. You have a ton of that. Let's see. Oh, the Hall of Trials stuff. For your Hall of Trials, I would spend those on getting more copies of Violin. I would just craft these Wyvern mats. You know, I would go for right-sided gear like boots, necks, rings. Just try to get better stuff. I think that's pretty much it. Was there anything else I wanted to mention? No, I think that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. I think the main thing that I noticed is that you just haven't really used your resources. Artifacts as well can be leveled up. You know, max your SSB drink. You have the bottles to do it. I even saw in the guild tab, you know, that you have a ton of these saved up. You can use that to help max your artifacts out. So use your resources, and I think, you know, you don't even need to put a lot of effort into doing that. That'll catapult you right away. So that's going to be it for now. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.